Even from Sven Botman to the extent that it was going wide, and it's a Sven Botman own goal is where we are at the break. So 2-0, Manchester United in control already today. A 2-0 win for Spurs against Chelsea at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We brought you that game live, and in the Scottish League Cup final, Celtic 2-1 winners against Rangers. We're going to turn to the rugby now because France-Scotland more than delivered in the events stake. It was very eventful from minute one. Alison Miller, Irish international, with us on the line. Hi, Alison.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
Great. I know we'll primarily talk about Ireland, Italy in a few moments, but you kept half an eye on France-Scotland. I mean, I don't know where you start, really. Intermac scored a try after just a couple of minutes, and then Grant Gilchrist was sent off, straight red card. Then Demortier scored another try just moments after that. So you were thinking pretty much this is no contest. Then Mohamed House got himself sent off, crazy red card. That was on 12 minutes. This is all still inside 12 minutes. Then France scored another try. So at about the 18-19 minute mark, we thought, well, they're now both down to 14 men. But France are 19-0 up, so there's no real way back for Scotland. But Scotland, to their credit, got back into the game, and when Finn Russell scored on 67 minutes, there was just 4 points in the game at that stage. It was 25-21. In the end, Fiku scored France's fourth try, and almost like Mac Hansen yesterday, put France out of sight with that 4-point gap, on 67 minutes. So Scottish Pack did very well, got themselves back into the game. You just kind of chalk it up as wonderfully entertaining. What would you say about the performances of both sides?
Yeah, I think France are certainly not looking the team they were at the moment. Obviously, they won and they put some very good patches of play together. Like Gail Fico was excellent. Some really nice parts of their game. But I think in terms of like their defence at the moment, it just doesn't look cohesive. You have people coming up in dribs and drabs, and it would have been kind of a hallmark for Sean Edwards' defence, how well United they were in that defensive structure last year, but it's something looks a bit off, I think, in that. I suppose they look a little bit, I won't say tired, but maybe heavy or whatever the word is. They're playing good rugby, but I don't think they're at the level they were at last year, or they're not performing as they were. Like you, I thought after like whatever it was, 5-6 minutes was going to just get worse, and I just thought, well, this is going to be a terrible game. But Scotland came back into the game. They might rue the chances. They got, quite like Ireland yesterday. There was times they were in the 22 and they weren't clinical and they didn't finish off their scores. But also the start they got didn't help. And when it was that tight at the end, towards the end, they might rue the bad start that they got and that they were constantly chasing. So had they got a better start, things might have been a bit fairer for them. But they had some really good performances around the park.
France are such an interesting case because I think last year, given the age profile and given how much the Galtier tenure has been all about the World Cup, we just assumed everything's in order. They're only going to be better again in 2023. Even the defence point you mentioned, we thought, well, Edwards has this sorted out now. I mean, it's not going to take a backward step. And a few injuries notwithstanding, there is something of a malaise there. Ireland made them look ordinary-ish at times. Scotland, again, did very well in Paris against them. And you mentioned the defensive issues. It's really interesting. I like they had an extraordinary year last year, unbeaten. Who knows? Maybe there is a degree of hangover. We just all talked about it in terms of the World Cup, but maybe it did take more out of them than we had realised.
Yeah, or you don't know what way they're kind of like periodising their training, like to go all out for a World Cup, and who knows? But they're definitely don't look at they're buying in. I think in terms of even their overall game plan, I think there's probably a little bit lack of cohesion. They don't look like they're all on the same page. Look, they've phenomenal players there. Peno, the strength of that like ball carrying winger, they've just talent all around the park, but it's just something a little bit off, and it's hard to kind of really figure out what that is. Like, I think, as you said, Ireland opened them up quite easily at times. And we always knew about the French flair, the French attacking flair, and it was always just something they had to get to their fence right with that to make them a complete team. But are they kind of going back to their old ways? I don't know. Is it fatigue? They play a lot of rugby in the top 14. Are guys tired? Do they need a break? It's hard to tell.
Yes. With the view to round 4 at Murrayfield, Scotland down to 14 men early, down 19-0 away from home. If there's something wrong in that squad or in the character and personality of that squad or the team spirit, that's the moment at which you just really start shipping water. For them to come back to within 4 points in Paris on 67 minutes, I think if anyone was in any doubt, Murrayfield's going to be sticky.
Yeah, it is going to be sticky. And I think, look, it would have been a very different case next week or the week after if Scotland won. That would have been a big, big game for Ireland. But at the same time, they're going to be hurt after this, and they're going to come out, and it can be, as I think Simon Zebo alluded to on the TV today, it's a hostile place to go to. So Ireland will have to be, at their best and playing good rugby, and fix those small things that went wrong at the weekend.
On the 2 red cards, so Grant Gilchrist early on, it was shoulder to head. There was no real mitigation. I suppose what fully damned him was that he had his right arm tucked tight against his body and the shoulder went into the face of Gelanche. So there was no effort to wrap either. It's a clear red card.
Yeah, clear red. And I think the game has got that way. And players just got to be better at their tackle technique. They can't be putting their teams in those situations, which is happening every day in rugby, but it's there for a reason. It's to make the game safer. So look, that's the most important thing to all the players, and in years to come they'll be thankful that this approach was there. But for the moment, it can be difficult for teams and players to try and navigate through it. Gilchrist
has a pretty good track record. Mohammed House, who was subsequently sent off for France, he doesn't. He was sent off in Murrayfield a couple of years ago for throwing a punch.
Yeah, discipline isn't good.
No, and this was on 12 minutes. You're France. You're 2 tries to the good. You're against 14 men. Things are going great, and I suspect this will count against him with a World Cup coming into view, because they just can't allow for this to be possible. They'll throw away a big game when it really counts. Ben White, the Scottish scrum half, was in that vulnerable position that scrum halves are in, where he's head down to pick up the ball. You could only really describe it as like a diving headbutt on House's part.
Yeah, as you said, they're up, they're winning. It's early on in the game. They're not under they're under pressure defensively, obviously, but they're not under pressure in terms of the clock being in red and 80 minutes, and they're trying to win the ball back. They had a lot of time left in that game, not to be forced into doing something crazy at that stage. So look, that's like an individual thing, and his track record, doesn't look good for him. Sometimes players like that they're hard to carry when they can be a liability, and they're liable to do anything at any given stage. As I said, that there wasn't a need for that at the time.
What was very striking is the referee said, "I'm not seeing a high danger in this," and he was caught on mic saying this, and I suppose thankfully, unlike with Wayne Barnes in Dublin, his assistant didn't just look at his feet. His assistant said, "Well, actually, hang on," and pointed out the danger of the situation. And to be fair then to the referee, he listened to his assistant and upgraded it to a red, which is kind of what you want to happen in these situations. If fair enough referee doesn't see it, it's not a great interpretation, but at least his mistake was preempted.
Yeah, obviously reffing a game is hard, and he mightn't have been in the right position to actually see it, so it was good that it was highlighted, because it's not a good look for rugby when these things are, we won't say, it's not that they're ignored, but they could be missed in those opportunities. So to have good authority to pull that up and get it checked is really, really important for the game and the game in the future.
So Scotland in very good nick ahead of Murrayfield, and France not quite themselves, but they do win, and they'll be hoping for an Irish wobble before the end of this championship. Let's talk Italy 20, Ireland 34. In the main,
yeah, great game.
Yeah, well, it's funny. You ordinarily, I mean, Ireland beat Italy by big margins over the last 3 years. You have to go back to that awful 2019 year, the last time they struggled against Italy. So ordinarily of late, if Ireland had a sketchy period against Italy, like they did in the second half, we'd all be scratching our heads and saying, how worried should we be? But you said it, great game, and Italy played their part in a great game. They are genuinely improving.
Yeah, they really are improving, and they're a very fit team. I think there was Ireland talk a lot about being fit. I think Italy were equally as fit as Ireland during the game. Italy looked to go wide a lot. It wasn't always on, and sometimes they were playing quite deep and lateral, but at times they came back at inside shoulders of Ireland and got some change of it. Obviously, Ireland had some issues in the centre, lack of cohesion, and then that was affecting James Lowe's defence, and it was all a little bit off. And I think fair play to the Italians, they possibly would have highlighted that they saw Ringroses out and that there would be two predominant 12s, I suppose, in that centre partnership, and they were getting change from the 13 channel. And it's just something, I suppose, to be mindful of. Most of our centres at the moment are 12. Henshaw's played most of his rugby at 12. And I know he's played 13, but if we get to a scenario in a World Cup where Ringrose is not available, we need someone to be able to defend that 13 channel comfortably.
Yeah.
And I think Ringrose is a superb player, but I think we probably don't notice all the work he does in defence till he's not there. You know, he just does it so well. It's so hard to defend, but that was obviously an issue. Look, it was rectified at times, but definitely, you know, they haven't played together much, but something for the future. You know, they're all predominantly 12s. Can we get some of these guys maybe getting a little bit of game time at 13 for their provinces? Look, the provinces can't be forced to do these things, but it might be something that needs to be looked at, because Italy definitely exposed us in that channel. But Ireland played some great rugby. I think, like a few years ago, we were crying out for Ireland to offload the ball, and the speed of ruck ball that we have now, that ability to offload is cutting up teams. And I think that's a huge difference. Like 3 of our tries came from offloads. And another thing is we're just taking the right option. James Lowe had his hand in a few tries yesterday, but Ireland are passing the ball at the right times. Like, you know, for was it Aki's try? Lowe gave it to him. Lowe could have gone himself. Other players in low scenarios of Ireland of before would have, you know, tried to take it themselves. But they're doing the right thing nearly all of the time. So we got another try from a goal line dropout. They tried to stay moved, didn't work, but the goal line dropout is becoming a really important attacking weapon first. It's essentially a set piece. So, you know, Ireland get to be quite imaginative of what they do off it, and like we've scored a try 2 weeks running from it. So that's really good to see. It's really good to see that.
It is very encouraging from an Irish point of view that there's now a lot of tape for other teams to study, and they're still not managing to stem the flow. And Andy Farrell, it's becoming his regular point after games. God, we could have scored a lot more tries, which again shows the creativity that's flowing through the side. Yeah,
like obviously James Lowe's opportunity, Bundy Aki's opportunity in 22, when we weren't clinical enough to finish our examples. There was 5 or 6, I think, scenarios where he could have scored. So it just shows that we're creating those opportunities and they're there, but we just got to finish them now. But I think there was some great tries scored, and I think like the subs that came on when they came on yesterday, like O'Mahony, Byrne, Sheen, they made a huge difference. And Conor Murray looked great. He looked back to his best. And I think with this Andy Farrell team, they talk a lot about being themselves on the pitch, and like I know that they're all saying that and they're enjoying camp and they're loving playing rugby, but like I think that's probably fairly obvious when you have Conor Murray come off the bench and he has the confidence to snipe at the ruck like he used to and get that offload away to Hansen, who's brilliantly trailing, you know, behind the ruck, just hiding in there looking for an opportunity. Andy Farrell talks about like his wingers being untidy and wanting to come off their wings, get involved, look for work, and Hansen did that really well. And I thought Hansen's subtlety of hands yesterday was very, very good, especially for Keenan's try. He was good. And I just think these things are like really important for this Irish team. I suppose maybe an area of where they could improve, we did get cut open by Italy at times, and I think we can sometimes be a little bit vulnerable from teams that like to run or play a little bit unpredictable. In November against Fiji. Now, look, it was a very changed team, but at times we just looked exposed. Sometimes in the wider channels, sometimes when a team will do what's unexpected in that given moment. Like you think, teams maybe going to exit, any sensible team would exit in this scenario, but they then decide to run or do something unexpected. And I think maybe at times that's where we could improve. Our defence probably wasn't where it should have been. There was 20 plus missed tackles, so that's something that they'll have to look at. Yeah. Obviously, some of that coming from the centre partnership, but I just think times we just look a little bit exposed from, like Italy were running from deep and they were at times going laterally, but they got behind us and they were good. Like, there's some great players. Canone, the number 8, Garbisi, Capuzzo, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. These are all very dangerous players and they're playing like a new brand of rugby. And I think like it's really important for the Six Nations and World Rugby that Italy are competitive. And like there's so little teams in World Rugby that can win a World Cup or be competitive, that we need a team like Italy that's in a really important competition like the Six Nations to be doing what they did yesterday and to be, as they said themselves, like Crowley said, they're not happy with that. They're not here for moral victories. They thought they could have a crack at Ireland. They didn't, and they'd be disappointed about that. And I think towards the end, when they kicked and they had an overlap, like that's a missed opportunity for them that they didn't take advantage of.
Yeah. If we dig into that defensive point for a moment, Ireland had 27 missed tackles. They had 20 in the first half alone. So Ireland had more missed tackles in the first half than Italy had in the entire game. Italy had 18 across the entire game. That's kind of an extraordinary statistic. So I absolutely accept, and akin to the Fiji game, it's a side that have never really played together before. From 9 through to 13, they're all feeling each other out a touch. On the Ringrose point, though, like it sounds like you're pretty much saying no one there is ever really going to get up to speed with where he is. Is it just in terms of the many small decisions he's making across 80 minutes? That's the difference. Like if Aki was given time at 13, would he get up there, or you're not so sure?
Yeah, like it's a combination of things. It's time playing there. It's your experience to know how to defend, when to hold, when to push, when to trust. And like there was times, I suppose, Aki was pushing out too early and getting caught on his inside, going too early. It's been used to playing with the player inside you, but it's also being in those scenarios countless times where you have to make these really split decisions really quick. And like Ringrose is playing there like a lot, so he's made mistakes and he's recovered and he's learned. So I'm not saying that Aki can't figure it out, but I think, as I said, maybe like we're very dominant on 12s, and maybe some of these guys need to get in those scenarios where it's a different position, it's different defence. You're going to connect with your winger, you got to connect with your 12, and there's a lot going on. And teams nowadays with so many option runners, you've got to make these split decisions like really fast. And if you don't make the correct one, you're exposed. So maybe, like obviously it wasn't. It was last minute, and maybe that's good. Maybe it's good that they were in that scenario yesterday, and they have identified that something that needs to be addressed, and that we give these lads time. And but it's a bit of both, really, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's fair. On the back row, I mean, I don't know if anyone in the Irish pack really stamped their authority all over the game in the way that we've become used to in recent months. But Doris at 6. Conan at 8, Peter O'Mahony on the bench, Van der Fleer obviously at 7. The point was made that Doris, who has been as good as any 8 in the world of late, at 6, he's not involved enough, I suppose.
No, I just think Doris that we know and love, and his footwork and his ability to offload, and even his passing ability, it comes out much more at 8. I think when he went back to 8 and O'Mahony came on and he went back to the
balance was back. The
balance was back, yeah. And I think there's always an argument, you put Doris at 6 and you move someone else into 8, and you can do that, but I think like when you have a world class player like Doris, why would we play him out of position? Like,
well, it's funny, I was talking to someone who knows the back row situation very well. I won't name him, but he's played there himself, and I was just trying to get that sense of like, do the coaching ticket almost, do they want to get Conan into the side somehow, and that's part of it. And his sense was that if Conan was playing better, O'Mahony might struggle, that Conan is more explosive, he's younger, he's a better ball carrier, you'll get more go forward ball, you get over the gain line, and so on some level the coaching ticket want him in there. But if getting him in there is going to weaken the balance, then they might just have to go at what they have. That was his read.
Yeah, and I think, that's they probably do want him in there, and like he's probably not Conan at his best at the moment.
True.
But if he was, and we know what Conan can do, and maybe they're backing him to get into form, and like coaches will give players that opportunity sometimes, but. Doris then is so unbelievable.
If it's at the expense of Doris, then it's maybe not.
Yeah, which is, you got, and I suppose they're trying to balance what fits the back row as well. And it's not always as simple as like the three, whatever. Like they'll have their different strengths and what. But I think, like they're probably trying to get him in there, and he is younger, and they're probably trying it out. But I thought Van der Fleer did well, and like he got a good offloads off, and he's carrying well, and not obviously Van der Fleer of World Rugby Player of the Year territory, but it's interesting debate, and I just think, as I said, Doris looks more at home at 8, and he looks more free and more able to do what he's great at.
The tight head injury crisis looks to be eased by the fact that Furlong, it seems, is going to be fit for Murrayfield. Beelum looked to have a serious injury. Tom O'Toole's done very well, in fairness to him. Now, he didn't scrummage once against France, but he got some scrums yesterday and is good in the loose. So he's kind of done reasonably all right for, third man at this stage?
Yeah, I suppose, if Furlong doesn't come back, that's the issue, I suppose.
That is the issue. Who's on the bench then if O'Toole starts?
I don't know, Salanoy, or I'm no scrum expert and prop expert, so Salanoy, I don't know, I'm not sure, but that I suppose is maybe some little bit of a concern if Furlong doesn't come back into the side. But I think I really like the narrative that Andy Farrell has created about the injuries and how he's going about it. It's just he's seen every bit of adversity as a challenge and taking it by the scruff of the neck and saying, look, we'll work with it. And, there's kind of this relaxed, I don't mean relaxed in the sense that they're doing nothing, but relaxed in the sense that we can go with this, and anything that comes against us, we're able to deal with. And I think that's really, really important. I think you're going to have things happen to players and in a World Cup. And it was great for Byrne to play that game yesterday, and he's playing flatter to the line. He's finding holes to put players through, and I think he'll get great confidence from steering Ireland through, especially through an unsteady time there yesterday when there's 4 points in it. He gets the penalty. I know it's right in front of the post, but it's a pressure moment, and I think
and it must cross Byrne's mind and Casey's mind. Oh my God, if we lose in Rome, I'm in big trouble. Akin to Jack Carty in the World Cup in 19. Even if it was only for a millisecond, I guarantee it crossed Byrne's mind on the pitch. God, there's 4 points in it. We better not bloody lose this. And yet there was no sign. There was no sign of panic, which is a lovely thing. He has that experience now, I suppose. Yeah,
and look, I don't know. Those things would have come into my head playing. I don't know. You would try and battle them away, and they're only human. So maybe yes, it did come in. I don't know. Maybe they're more, what's the word?
Moment
mentally
focused.
tough than that. Yeah. Or resilient. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not saying he was thinking about it when he was passing the ball to someone, but just millisecond of God, there's 4 points on it here.
A doubt, and I think the doubt is there in every sports person's mind. I think it's what drives everyone on. So potentially, and I think, it's interesting. Then I think how he did, he put it over, he steered them through, and they got out of essentially maybe a little bit of a rough patch where Italy were coming into the game, finding a bit of momentum, and he gets through the game, he starts for Ireland, they win, and in the end win with a good margin. I suppose it's interesting, Murray did very well when he came on. I think there was a lot of talk before that Murray was very slow at the base of the ruck, but I think he's kind of shown, especially in the last game, that he's quicker than he was. He's sniping around the rucks like we used to see. He came on, he made something happen, and I think Casey and Jemison Gibson Park are similar in that they're, they go for quick speed ball and quick ruck ball, and I think Murray then is a bit different. So do you go for, Jamison, Gibson Park and Murray because they're different, or do you go for two quite the same? But I thought Murray did well, and no, it was like Italy played well, and I think they'll be disappointed with some maybe aspects of their game, maybe their game management at times, but like it was a cracking game, and I think Ireland have parts to improve.
Yeah, sure.
As I said, they're just a little bit vulnerable at times from when a team that plays unpredictable.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's always a bit tricky. On the Murray Gibson Park Casey point you mentioned, so I think Gibson Park is fairly obviously nailed on to start. Like the way that is always pitched is, well, if you want more spark and more tempo and maybe someone to come on and inject something into the game, geez, you want Casey, especially if you're behind. But maybe if you're ahead and you need someone to see the game out, you want Murray to come on. Problem is you don't know before the game starts what position you're going to be in. So how do you balance that? Murray can definitely argue, hey, I made something happen yesterday, so maybe that's good for him.
Yeah, I think Murray's even probably taken the feedback from the coaches that he's got, and he's changed his game again. Like there was a long, when he was playing maybe a year or two ago, he was obviously he had to follow the game plan, but he was box kicking a lot, he was slower, but he's taken obviously that feedback that that he had to be, and he does bring control, but he's we remember Murray of old when he'd be sniping around the ruck and taking people on, and you see that coming back in him where you hadn't seen that in quite a while. But why? He's thriving off that quick ruck ball, and I think, but he's such experience. He's over 100 caps. He's able to know when to control that tempo of the game when it needs be. And Jamison Gibson Park obviously is the preferred 9, and he plays the way he does. So yeah, it's hard to know. They obviously probably will always start. That's what I just think, Jamison Gibson Park, and then have Murray there. But Murray's doing well, and he's adapted. I think it's a sign of a great player. He's a great player. He's got a lot of flack over the last while, and I think he's just shown everyone the class of player that he is, that he can come back and be better again and adapt, because that's what you have to do in modern rugby. The game is always changing, and you're always going to be in competition with someone, so credit where credit is due.
Okay, Alison, we are just out of time. Thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
No, have a good evening. Bye,
cheers.
Joe.
Alison Miller there with her thoughts on the weekend thus far. Rugby on Off the Ball is with Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.
Get real-time updates